Welcome everybody again. I would like to continue the conversation that we had with Jarrod previously. And on the previous one, we have talked about exploration, we have talked about curiosity, we talked about why the organization exists, and we talked about the exploration component and pushing yourself towards your comfort zone and so on. But one of the tendencies that we have observed based on the feedback that we get from classes, from quality evaluation forms that we have, that quite many of our students were saying somehow things in the opposite direction because they have been saying that our training is too hard for them. And then they are challenged with the training, that they would prefer to have it shorter, that they would prefer to have a little bit more focus on the basic skills. And on the same time, what we have noticed as well as an organization is that students coming up to a higher level classes, they have not been good enough to have an equal progress as we have seen in the past. So it looks like the quality declined. But the question is it the quality declining, or is the group of people that we are reaching is different? And how we try to solve or approach that, we created a new class. So we created something that we called Performance Diver, which is a class that is shorter. In this way, it's a little bit more easier because the effort is less because it's just 2 days. But it teaches the most difficult components because it teaches buoyancy, trim, propulsion techniques, awareness, what GUE is, and so on. But from outside, it might seem that GUE is lowering the quality of training, or that we are selling out and trying to get exactly what would we trying to get then?
I've always wondered that because I've been hearing about it for years.
We always
as a nonprofit, you're selling out and doing what with all the money and reinvesting in an education. I think that it's understandable. People love conspiracy theories and they love to imagine, Machiavellian meanderings going on behind the scenes.
Reasons behind.
It's really not so complicated in a sense. I mean, it's a bit of a nuanced evolution as you've watched it just as much as me. In the beginning of GUE, we really just took everybody in from everywhere else, and there was no program like the Fundamentals program, which focused on strong capacity with fundamental basic skills, which is always the hardest. I mean, once you have those, then almost everything else is pretty easy. So you could really spend all your time on just stability and buoyancy and teach nothing else and create a solid person, and then they would be so much better advantaged. But anyway, over time, lots of complexities emerged. So other agencies created kind of copycat programs. Some of them did better than others. Most of them, in my opinion, and I don't mean this to be unkind, but many people copied the style but not the substance. And so lots of other divers started to gravitate to these various kinds of programs. And so it all kind of got meshed together in a way that people started to say, that fundamentals program's long and difficult and, it's technically oriented and all this kind of stuff. And we were really starting to betray the base foundation of what I think that program needs to be, which is what you articulated well, I think. And what I'm trying to say is very basic foundational skills.
Because because I teach quite a lot of instructors these days. And I always ask a question, what's the most difficult skill that you will ever teach? And they always come up, SMB deployment because it's so complex. Or no, it's a valve drill because it's so many steps. And I say I disagree, because for me the most difficult things is the things that you need to do with yourself as a diver to improve, meaning stability, buoyancy, moving, so propulsion, having this proprioception in space, where am I? And the procedure you can learn on the surface. You don't need to be in the water to learn how to do a valve drill.
No, it doesn't matter. Once the stability's there.
And you can do anything.
You've heard me tell this story, but I'll tell it anyway because I think it's really a fun kind of history of the fundamentals class. That class became reality in my head, at least, as a cave instructor before GUE existed, really. And I was teaching cave diving, and I was frustrated at my inability to teach it well to some of my students. And I was so focused on why were they having trouble with the reel, And one day I just stepped back for a second, and with this particular class, and their buoyancy was terrible. It hadn't really occurred to me
Yes.
immediately because they were very experienced, very
Yes.
advanced instructors.
You would not
So
assume
I
that,
kept
yeah.
just trying to make excuses for that
Yeah.
component. Oh, because they're running the reel and they don't know how to run the reel. And we stepped back and we started to
Yes.
work on fundamental skills. And that was the birth of what became the fundamentals
Yeah.
class. And I really think that we always tend to rush too far into the advanced stuff because it's
Yes.
fun, trick, cool,
And it's easier to
and we
teach
miss
in a
the
way.
other stuff. It's
And
easier what?
And it's easier to teach in a way because you have things that you can follow. Step number 1, step number 2. Oh, you missed step number 3. But if you are teaching buoyancy, it's not that obvious because you need to really have experience. Coming back to the previous episode that we did, you need to have experience as an instructor to recognize where the problem is, or the capacity, based on your experience, to step out, look at the big picture. We have a problem here, and then zoom in and then fix it.
And you have to be patient, right?
Yes.
Which is difficult.
Yes.
I hear funny stories about a lot of different agencies teaching technical diving who tell their students, go take a fundamentals
And
class
then come back.
and then come back to my class
Yeah.
because that, does the hard
Yes.
work for me because it does take time, energy, and focus.
Yes.
And I think that's an important part. Now to the performance diver class that you mentioned in terms of, we talked previously about GUE as an exploration organization, and that is the spirit I'm deeply attached to. It's one of my biggest priorities. In fact, as you know, I'm not currently teaching anymore, even though I love teaching and I miss it. But I don't have the time to both explore and dive actively and teach. And I had to pick one. And so I don't think I do my students or the organization a service by trying to teach and not dive. And I would also be betraying my deep passion for exploration. So that's a path that I've chosen. And I think that we would be betraying our obligation to the broader community if we don't also take on this mantle of helping to lift the industry further.
Yeah.
So with our fundamentals class, which I've met people for decades now who are very good instructors and very good divers who tell me, I'm still practicing for my fundamentals class. That's, and this is the point, but it's happened so often for so many years that finally I've just progressively seen that we can sit there and take other agencies' early people, or we can maintain our obligation as an industry leader and help to educate a broader swath of people in the most fundamental and important aspects, which is the basic stability and buoyancy.
Yes, and if you look, on when people are feeling discomfort in the water or where they are getting into trouble, very often it's related to stress, which very often is related to their inability to control themselves.
Almost always.
Yeah, it's almost always. Because I always teaching instructors say, look, and I have seen it on instructor examinations that on dive number 1 from a class where they should focus on buoyancy and trim, they start teaching kicks. I said, in the wet nose, and where did you teach them buoyancy and trim? And they go I said, this is what you teach. You cannot just skip and assume that they will know it because this is why they came.
Even in quite advanced diving, by the way, even in rebreather fatalities, I think a lot of those things are actually fundamental skills related as well, just people who are not stable.
Yeah, and somehow, of course, it's more difficult to teach, but this is the core. If we have people stable, the rest is flying. It's super easy, like you said. If somebody is super stable, he can do anything.
Yeah. And I think it's useful for us to pause here and also talk about what you well know, but for our audience to talk a little bit about the other complexity. Not only do I see it as an industry obligation to support and raise the level, now that more and more people have kind of copied the style of this kind of concept, we can fall back and focus on one of the challenges of creating a fundamentals instructor, which means that our reach into various communities is weaker if we don't have those instructors in positions to teach, or people are intimidated to take those classes.
Yes.
But creating a fundamentals instructor is super complicated and has always been.
Yes.
And it's complicated because of the role that class is meant to perform, which is as a gateway into technically oriented diving, which means that instructor needs to be able to handle trimix instructor trainers and open water diver with 10 dives or 15 dives under their belt, which is pretty complex. It takes a very good, very capable, very experienced instructor to field questions about why is the hose 22 inches long here and why do you do this and why do you clip that there, and while also fielding this other student and then merging them in the water in a nuanced educational way. That's a very hard instructor to create. On the contrary, taking a performance diver instructor and taking somebody who's got good, solid skills in the water, but evolving them into helping others develop good, solid skills. Because having stability in the water doesn't mean you know how to teach it. In fact, often you know less, because the better you are, probably the less you know how to teach.
Struggle. Yeah.
So of course, now we can focus and narrow like a laser beam on the real goal to get an instructor up to that level and get them comfortable and able to teach these core skills. And that's much faster process. It's not lowering the bar. It's not selling out. It's not done for fiduciary financial benefit for anyone. As you know, I'm just stating what I consider to be obvious, but will always be the allegation. It's designed to have a bigger reach. We are an organization that's global, and we desire to have a big effect on a global stage. I like to imagine in my world that we've done that to some extent in the industry thus far. I'm encouraged to see others modeling programs, but now we want to take the next step and make it even more accessible to even more people. And this is a natural evolution of that, together with the online platform, which you might want to talk about. My passion as well, but I know you're much deeper into it. And I think those two things married together is really like an accelerant, a catalyst we've not seen before.
And then very often when we discuss the change, not the change, but kind of the evolution a little bit, because we evolve all the time, which I really appreciate as an agency, that we are not stuck in one place, that we are kind of moving and then we are adjusting and developing, sometimes slower, sometimes quicker.
Not everybody appreciates that.
Nobody, yes, exactly.
We didn't even cover that subject, but go ahead.
But then when we are looking at developing instructors from different agencies, I always think what benefit they will have coming to us to teach that. Of course, very often, like you said, that I was preparing many years to become a fundamentals or GUE diver, and it might be the same with some instructors saying, I would like to become GUE instructor because it's highly recognized into some areas still. But then what would be the benefit? Okay, I should stop teaching here and add this one, and I'm teaching how I think it's peak performance buoyancy class actually.
Right.
Yes,
something like that.
Something like that.
Obviously everybody has to evaluate their own circumstance, and I think I would be the first to say there's amazing instructors with every agency. I think we both feel the same about that. I never intended, I know you don't, I know none of us intend to malign anyone. There's amazing people teaching for all agencies, but it really fits in a little bit. What are your goals, and what do you want for yourself, and do you want to be as the best that you can really be within an ecosystem and a community that supports that kind of high performance mindset? Do you want to go to the source, as it were, so that you're in a position to benefit from the organization that brought these concepts into the mainstream? And I think that the community component is the one that I think will settle out for most people who look at it seriously. Because now you start to build a connection into a global mindset of performance-oriented people who are passionate and enthusiastic about exploring the underwater environment in all its many forms, not just deep and far in caves, but also recreational and reefs and science and conservation, and a thriving community of people that are really just trying to make a difference in the world.
A certain commitment to it's a little bit. I will give example of myself when I started with GUE and I did my class where I worked there in Egypt at the time. And I came to my fundamentals class where I decided, okay, I'm becoming an instructor for GUE. I said finally, there are people like me. Yes, I don't need to fight against the current all the time and ask, can I do this? Can I do that? Maybe I change this. I was reinventing my own training, and then I realized I'm actually doing what is already there.
Yeah,
yes, it's already existing. So we talked about whether we are going back to the beginnings or is a cycle that repeats itself on a different scale, like in the previous episode. But it's a little bit the same, that now we are in a similar spot potentially, that we can attract a new generation of people like that. Because everything comes in cycles, and now we have the chance differently than in the past because the circumstance changed as well.
Sure, we have more tools, more capacity. Initially we just had to fight even for the idea that everybody doesn't pass just because they paid.
Yes.
Many of the things I hoped would be adopted, like cards that needed renewal and expiring cards, and things that I really wish the industry had followed, but was skeptical that they would, But we have seen a big refocusing,
Yes.
really across the board. I mean, when I started, I really had to leave an agency because I was advocating for MOD, maximum operating depth, clear marking on a bottle, as well as not taking students deep on air.
Yeah.
And I really ultimately had to leave the agency. And a big part of the reason GUE was created is because there was no opportunity for me to advocate for these performance-oriented, safety, team-oriented activities. And a lot of that has changed now, and there are a lot of people that we have helped shape and develop, and I'm excited about that. But now I think our recommitment is both on the exploration front. So I think for sure that none of us have lost a passion for that. It is true that there's more visible conversation, and probably even some of our instructors sometimes wonder, because it takes a while now to build this part of it. The performance in the online program takes some energy.
Yes.
The education build out took a lot of time. It was a couple decades of, okay, we want to get here, but we need to go there.
Yes, exactly.
And so that just took a lot of time. Now we're in a position we can start to leverage all of them in a better way. Over the next year, I think, you tell me because you're in the middle of it, but by the end of the year next year, I think that we'll be in a really solid place with our online program, which is, much more than what people think of when they think of an online program. So it's almost insulting when you call it that. But a much more sophisticated adaptive learning environment that's going to enable our people to get a lot more out of their education and come much more prepared for the classes that will then allow them to apply that knowledge with a capable, experienced instructor. All of those things let us focus even more energy now on the exploration, the communities, and the higher level classes, which is where I see us starting to pivot back to as those things come into fruition in Q2, 3 next year.
Yeah, so basically it's not that we are selling out. We are not actually even changing. We are evolving into, or we are finally getting everything aligned. And we have been talking about this for a few years, that we feel all of the floating bits and pieces, they are trying to fit. And now I feel they really start to fit. And then what we see, even though the whole industry, very often when I talk with representatives saying, we have a problem with younger generation people getting inspired by diving. But what I see, I would not call it a spike, because it's not like that. But I see people that are younger, and I'm really surprised how young they are and how motivated they are. They want to come, they want to progress, they want to train hard, they want to become the better versions of themselves every single day and so on. So there is this trend, and I think it's just for us to recognize that we are evolving into something that, constantly evolving into the same direction, having more and more input and more experience, which is always needed, to kind of actually become, and we will never become the organization that we want because we always find something new to do.
No, there's a reason why it's a quest for excellence, right?
Exactly. So it's a
journey,
drive.
And the journey is the point. And I think that, for me, it's a recommitment organizationally to every aspect. So, trying to reach more people to help them realize their goals, objectives, and dreams, calling that selling out would be kind of funny to me. Would be, for me, what we're doing is we're doing exactly what we intended organizationally to help people realize their best version of themselves. And I want to do that at every level. And we need a solid base in our community, and we need to pull our own weight in the industry. We could sit back and just take everybody else's open water divers, but that's just not fair. We needed to commit to supporting people from the very beginning throughout their entire learning. And they can come to GUE wherever they want or not, be influenced by GUE or not. I think we're very happy for that. We just want to be sure they have that opportunity. And the performance diver just gives us a bigger reach to provide them the opportunity to make that decision. And I'm happy with whatever decision they make. So do it.
Yeah, not selling out.
Make whatever decision you want. And let's go have fun and explore to our own capacity.
No.
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 All right.
A little bit beyond.
But thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you.